what I liked about your book is you can sort of break the human experience, I'm not sure what the right word is for it, down into really two big chunks. You've got financial and cultural. And in the book, you detail the ways in which both of those are tremendously impacted. I have a quote sort of that covers each section from your book, and I want to read the first one now, which was just, it literally stopped me in my tracks. And this, I'm going to read, it's a long quote, but I want to read the whole thing so that people understand the financial side of this, the implication of having a system that inflates over time and uses boom and bust cycle versus something that deflates over time. And when you hear that, I'm just going to read the quote, because the first time you hear the numbers, the one that is bad sounds good, and the one that is good sounds bad. And it's, I think, a huge part of how people end up getting lost in all of this. All right, this is a quote from the book. The average U.S. house price in 1915 was $3,500. In 2021, it was $269,039. That is a compound annual growth rate in the price of the house at a rate of 4.18% over 107 years. Had the fiat standard adopted a fixed supply in 1914, so not inflating, and prices declined by 2% per year instead, the average American house today would cost $411. And I can hear people panicking because that sounds terrible. With a much smaller supply of the dollar, prices would be far lower than they are today. Incomes would, of course, also be much lower, but the decreasing price of goods means that they become more affordable over time, and that saved money buys more goods every year. $411 in 1915 could have bought your great-grandfather 12% of a house, but if he had saved it and passed it on to you, it would buy you an entire house today. Your grandfather's pocket change would be enough for you to live off of today. A world of decreasing prices would provide people with a strong reason to save for the future, and one can only imagine how much better living standards would be today had humanity not been afflicted by inflationary fiat. All right. Help people understand why on earth they would want their house to be worth $411 today. That just seems so impossible and so counterintuitive and so zero sum. Like if Bitcoin can't be inflated, then if I get some Bitcoin, it means y'all motherfuckers, you get no Bitcoin, or at least not those. So it seems, to somebody who grew up in a fiat system, it seems bad. Why isn't it bad?
Well, I mean, if you think it's bad, then why don't you just go move to Venezuela or Lebanon, where your house is going to be worth 10 billion of the local currency? So, if you're trying to collect zeros next to your house valuation, move to Zimbabwe, Lebanon, Venezuela, go where the hyperinflation is, and you'll have the most valuable house. Obviously, people don't care about how many zeros you attach to their to prices of goods. People care about the purchasing power of money, and this is really one of those very, very, very obvious insights. But you have to basically be part of or subscribe to the ideas of the Austrian School of Economics to be willing to just accept this very obvious thing that any human being with half a brain will accept. You have to, like, what do you prefer? Would you rather have $10 or 100 yens? Well, 100 yens are worth a lot less than $10. So people prefer to have the $10. It doesn't matter the exact number. What matters is the purchasing power. What can you buy with it? And so the choice is not between having in a world in which your house would have been worth $400, your day-to-day transaction would be done in cents, more or less. So, we'd have 1 cent bill, and it would be probably worth something like the $100 bill today. And then we'd have units that are smaller, and then the cent would be divided into smaller and smaller units. And that's fine. So then, you could have your house be worth 400 million of the smaller unit of a cent or whatever it is. But the point is that in that world where the money appreciates, every year, 4 generations of your family, going back to 107 years ago, every one of your family for the last 4 generations, every year they had the choice of saving money that every year was going to be worth slightly more. the next year. So think about your family over the last 4 generations, and I think pretty much everybody, no matter where you are in the world, everybody has gone through, everybody's family has gone through a period in which they witnessed their savings essentially get wiped out. Either it would happen suddenly, bank failure or bank collapse or a financial crisis, or it happened gradually through inflation. But everybody has seen this, and everybody has learned their lesson not to save. Everybody has accepted the idea that you shouldn't be saving. And so everybody has been living in debt, and everybody's been financially insecure. And then because of debt...
That doesn't seem true. Now, I obviously have read your book, so I know what the punchline is, but I think it's worth explaining to people because I was taught to save. My mom taught me to save. And yet, as you, and I think a lot of people will feel that way, but as you actually look at what society does versus what your mother may have told you to do, the evidence starts to mount that people really, really discount the future. But give us a couple examples of how we can see that the statement that we've all been taught not to save is true.
Well, I think a lot of parents teach their kids to save, but it's pretty bad advice. Like if you save in the fiat standard, I mean, if you save money, if you hold on to money, you're witnessing it basically lose its value by 5, 10, 15% per year. And, the kind of actionable information from understanding the fiat. So, when you read the Bitcoin standard, you come up with the conclusion, the inescapable conclusion that you need to buy Bitcoin. You need to be long Bitcoin because there's only so many and the world is going to find out and the price is going to go up. Well, when you read fiat, you come up with the conclusion that you need to be short fiat. In fact, you realize that that's basically how people get rich on a fiat standard. In fact, you listen to people like, say, Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Man, Poor Man. You look at a lot of the successful businessmen, the way to get rich is to accumulate hard assets and accumulate cash yielding assets while accumulating also debt. You want to have your liabilities be things that are scarce, and you want to have your assets be things that are scarce: houses, companies, real estate, stocks, bonds, etc. And then you want to have your liabilities be fiat. You want to owe dollars. So in fact, it turns out, saving is good for building character for young people, but really once you get into the real world, you don't just save up to buy your house, and people who do that end up really paying a lot more than if you just take a loan. When you take a loan to pay the house, you're shorting the dollar, and then you benefit from the inflation because the value of your loan repayment goes down. And especially true in the case of hyperinflation. I have friends in Lebanon who had loans to buy houses, and then with the collapse of the lira, collapse of the local currency, now their loans are 95% discounted. They have to pay them back in a currency that is... So they keep the house, and they just have to pay very, very little amount of money. So the people who didn't take out loans and saved money in the bank got wiped out. And that's happened all over the world. It happens very quickly during the case of hyperinflation, but it's happening slowly today around you. Like imagine if you have your money in the bank, if you've been saving, what is your bank giving you in terms of interest? 0.2%, 1%, 2%, best case scenario? Well, you're losing every year 5 or 10% or so because look at the price of the house that you want to buy. Especially if you want to buy a nice house in a nice neighborhood. Look at the price. Can you save up? Here's the question. Can you actually save up to buy a house in Miami Beach? Think about how much income you need in order to save up to buy a house in Miami Beach versus how much income you'd need to buy it in debt. If you buy it with debt, you get the short contract on the US dollar, and then your repayments are going down over time, and so the house is just continuously getting cheaper and cheaper. You live in it today and then it gets cheaper. If you try to save up for it, you'd need to have astronomically high income to be able to save in a saving account that appreciates at 1%, while the Miami Beach house that you want is appreciating at 5, 10, 15% per year.
So help me understand something, because as you're saying this, I'm starting to think, okay, what do I need to take loans out on? Like, how do I, get myself in a better situation? The catch is, though, that if I'm still getting paid in the fiat, it's the two are tied. So it's going down, like my purchasing power is going down at the same rate that my loan is technically getting cheaper. So it ends up feeling like a wash. So I guess I'm going back to then your earlier point. I have to have a hard asset that's going up in value. So I've got that. I can't just have my my short on the dollar. I have to have something over here that's going up. So as this goes down, I'm laughing because it's getting easier and easier for me to pay it. But the key is to have both. You can't just have one. Or you can't just have the debt, I guess.
This was like the kind of breakthrough insight that made me tie the book together when Michael Saylor came into the Bitcoin world and started talking about how he's really, what his strategy is and his idea of why he's borrowing in order to hold Bitcoin. And when he explained, this is what rich people do. If you're rich, you have hard assets, you have an old building, you have real estate, you have a factory. You don't need to work in a fiat system. You just are constantly refinancing, and your loans continue to get cheaper and you continue to take out money. And the goal, is to die with a lot of debt. Like, this is how you win in the fiat game. You win by accumulating the most debt. But you have to always, and this is the tricky part. Like, this is, all right, so this is the kind of great side of it, is that, you just keep clocking up more debt and running up a bigger tab on the bar, and then you die. And you win, basically. But of course, the risky part, and that's why I think it's not a universally good thing. The risky part is that at any month you miss a payment, you risk losing all of your assets. So, well, not any month, it's going to be a few months. But if your business has a few bad months, you might miss the payments. You could lose the business, and that's why basically I think it's. Everybody's just massively insecure, and everybody is heavily discounting the future because the future is so much more uncertain in this world, as opposed to a world in which we just accumulate savings that appreciate. Because in that world where you're trying to accumulate a positive score, it's, you're running up a score in terms of let's get as much gold coins as we can. The more gold coins that you have, the better you sleep at night. The more secure you are, the less you have to worry about whether your business is going to make it this month or not, or whether you're going to end up being homeless, or whether you're going to lose your business. But in a world in which you have, debt, and you're just running up more and more and more debt, the more debt you're running up, the more insecure you are.